I'd like to talk about tasks and task groups in MaintSmart. Let's begin by going to the Task and PM Setup screen. Okay, so to begin with, let's define what a task is. A task is going to be a piece of text that's going to describe some sort of task, whether it be preventive maintenance, some sort of repair, a project, or other type of work. Now, these tasks are shared in MaintSmart between the PM section of the program and the work order section. The task is going to be a maximum of 255 characters, and I'll explain why in a moment. As such, the task should be fairly concise and focused on the actual job at hand. Okay, so why the 255 characters? Well, for the purposes of querying the data, reporting, analyzing, and so on, the database, which is storing all of this data in MaintSmart, likes to query or use a text string of 255 characters or less. So by keeping it at 255 characters or less, we are able to go into either our PM analysis or our work order analysis screens, and then we can query for how much money and labor and so on, parts have we used between a certain date range to adjust chain tension, say for example. Okay, so that being said, we aren't limited at all in how much we can describe the task or the job at hand. So think of this as more of a task header or a title for the job. Now, in many cases, this may be enough information, and you may not need to add any additional procedures or details, but there is unlimited room in another field in the PMs and the work orders to add unlimited text details to describe the procedure. Okay, more on the task. So how do we create a task? Well, in MaintSmart, it's the same as it is everywhere else. We click the new button, we type in our task description, and we click save. That's really all there is to it. Now, we do have another field over here which I haven't talked about yet, and that's our task group. And so our task group is going to be used as a filter, and this is available from, again, the PM and the work order screen both. So if we have a task that we say, for example, an HVAC task, we might want to say check ducting for fit and leaks, for example. Okay, and then when I save that, that's now become a new HVAC task. So I can scroll down and find that HVAC task and see that it's in here. Now we can also, here it is right here, we can also edit this. So by editing it, basically we're changing what this says, or we can move it to a different task group. Works the same throughout the program. We select the row with our mouse, make our changes, and then click save. That's all there is to it. Okay, so tasks. Now, what is the standard that we suggest for creating each task? All right, you may have noticed by looking at this, the equipment names are not embedded in the task. For example, say we have a 90-degree diverter conveyor, number 1 through 10. We don't enter the equipment name into this adjust diverter task. In other words, we don't say 90-degree diverter, etc., adjust diverter, and so on. We don't do that, because if we did, then we'd only be able to use this task on that particular piece of equipment. These tasks should be created so that they're reusable, so they can be shared throughout the program. If you don't do that, you're going to end up with a huge amount of tasks in here, and it's going to make the program much more difficult to use. Now, why do you not want to enter that equipment? Well, for the reasons stated, obviously, but also there's no reason for it, because when you use a task, you always join it with an equipment item. For example, let me jump to the work order screen for a moment. If I click the New button, and I go in here and I'll just pick, let's see here, Other, okay, and I'll go to my HVAC tasks, and I'll notice there's the task I just created. Okay, I've joined this task with this piece of equipment. So there's really no reason to include the equipment name with the task. It really defeats the purpose of using the program. Okay. All right, so I'm in the demo version right now, which only allows, I think, 10 work orders. So it's not going to let me save that. But this is what you want right here. All right. Same kind of applies to your task groups. Now I'm kind of backing into this. I discussed tasks first. Now I'm going to go to task groups. Task groups are going to be ways of grouping up similar tasks. So if you kind of look at these, this says bagger tasks. So generally you'd want to enter these ones that were specific to a type of equipment last. So when you're creating your groups, start out with the most generic task groups you can think of and work towards more specific ones. For example, we even have one here called generic tasks. Okay, it could be called other tasks, or just other might be a way of describing it. Then you have others like electrical. Well, there's a lot of things that are electrical. You might have a mechanical. Yes, we do. We have a mechanical. And then we can move towards more specific task descriptions and task groups. Inspection, lubrication, hydraulic. Okay, so we're getting more and more focused on the actual piece of equipment, or type of equipment, I should say, or class of equipment. Chain tasks, what types of tasks we do on chains. So this is the best way to approach this, and just keep in mind, when you're doing this, you don't have to worry about exactly what you put here, because you can always go back and change it. Now, of course, it makes a lot of sense to get it right the first time, if you can. So let me end this by illustrating how these tasks would be used. So I have task groups and tasks, and then under our PM screen, our PM setup screen rather, we could create some PMs by using a task. If we want to filter, we could filter and go down to our HVAC tasks, of which we only have one, and then pick an interval for the PM and then save it. So this would be an example of how you would use a task with a PM. Again, you join the task, in this case with an interval in days, and there's another video on all this that explains it in detail, and we join it with the equipment. Additionally, with the work order screen, we already covered this, but just to reiterate, we have our equipment, and then we join it with a task, and of course with the work order there's many other fields of which are optional. Okay, so that's basically how you create tasks, when you'll want to create a task, and how to link them to task groups in MaintSmart.